Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. Every person on this planet needs validation. That feeling of being accepted and understood. If you log into any social media platform, you're going to see this onslaught of what validation looks like and how you get there and how you should look for validation on the outside and how it's an inner process. And of course, validation is an inner process. However, it's also an outer process too. It's completely normal to want to have validation from others, from your parents, your spouse, your friends, your boss. Some of us seek external validation to an unhealthy level. So today, you and I are taking a one-on-one deep dive into validation, what it looks like, how it's actually a two-step process, and then I'm going to give you a handful of ways to begin to validate yourself so that you don't only put stock into other people's value and opinion of you. So let's waste not another single second. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. I have spent a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, this past week talking to people in session about validation. It never seems to surprise me that there tends to be a theme throughout my week, and that just happened to be what it is. So I thought we probably needed to talk about it because if it's happening to the majority of people that I work with, it may be happening to you too. So let's talk about validation. Again, like I just said, when you open social media, it is very likely, if you follow any personal development or healing page, that you run into the idea, the concept of validation. And it's broken down into two things, inner and outer validation. And the two don't seem to ever coexist. It's either or. You need to learn to validate yourself. You need to learn to not take validation from everybody else. And I'm here to tell you, those two actually coexist and they are needed to work together. Validation is a two-step process. We have to have both in order for validation to work for us. Let's break it down, why we need both, how we need both, and then let's talk about what tends to cause the biggest problem, which is the self-validation. All of the limiting beliefs, the trauma, the not knowing how to accept your feelings, that gets in the way of us validating ourselves. So when we do have external validation, we don't know what to do with it. And this is really the biggest issue as to why people think these are two separate things and not a two-step process. So first and foremost, what is validation? Let's start with external validation, the definition of it. Then we'll go to inner validation, and then we'll talk about why we need both of them. But external validation really refers to basing one's value of the self on the standard of others. Think about that. I'm basing how I view myself based on your opinion. We fail to remember that other people's opinions are based on their experiences, and no matter how closely your lives mirror one another, the feelings, the experiences are never the same. So if we're looking at external validation and say, I'm putting all of my value in someone else's hands, it's going to lead to problems, right? Now let's break down internal validation. Again, this is a watered down definition. There's so much more to it. We're going to go deeper into it, but it's accepting and owning one's thoughts and feelings, ensuring that the conclusions that you have are credible and trustworthy. It's observing the results that you have without trying to diminish or devalue them. It's encouraging the self. acknowledging your strengths and your successes and your progress and your effort. It's noticing and accepting your feelings. It's prioritizing your needs. It's treating yourself with kindness, saying beautiful things to yourself, accepting that perfection is not necessary and that you have limits, flaws, and also make mistakes. Perfectionism, judging yourself harshly, denying your needs, comparing yourself to others, self-criticism is never validation. So now that we know one is outside, the other is inside, let's talk about why this is a two-step process. I like to explain the two-step process in kind of a silly example, but it's one that many people can visualize and understand, and then we'll break down the why. So think of an Easter egg. The plastic Easter eggs that we are all familiar with as children or now as parents that we spend a lot of time stuffing full of things. So the plastic Easter egg. If I go out and I throw a ton of plastic Easter eggs across the field, I'm going to be really excited to go out there and find them, to hunt them down. If when I'm out there, I'm looking around, I'm grabbing them, I'm putting in my basket, and I crack one open and there's nothing inside of it, I feel disappointed. There was an excitement of picking something up that was mine, then to opening it, cracking it open, and there's nothing in it. Suddenly, that plastic Easter egg that I was so excited to get has zero value. That is inner and outer validation. The outer, I'm going to pick something up. I'm having an experience. I'm hoping to get something from it. And then when I crack it open, there's nothing inside. So there's nothing that I connect to. If I'm out there doing the same thing and I'm picking up all of the Easter eggs and I crack them open and there's $100 bill inside, then there is a reward for picking up the external validation. There's something that I'm connecting to. There's something of value inside. This is why validation is two steps. If I go out and pick up a bunch of validation that I can't actually connect to, it's great for just a moment, but I can't actually hold it and use it as evidence, use it as something to build myself up because there's nothing inside of me that actually believes what I picked up or what I experienced. The same is true about inner validation. If I ran out to go get all of the Easter eggs and I was told there was a field of Easter eggs and all I run out there to is some scattered candy, I'm going to be really disappointed. There's only the inside, right? There's nothing that is going to encourage me to continue to look because there's maybe only a few pieces of candy out there and it doesn't feel as plentiful, as bountiful, as beautiful as if the whole experience was there. This is why validation is two steps. I need the ability to encourage myself and also get that external validation that encouragement is real. If you listen to the podcast often, you hear me talk about how our brain works in patterns and evidence. That evidence is found based on our experiences. So this is why we need both. I am encouraging myself. I accept my strengths. I know that I can do this. And then when I go and do it and I have the validation from the evidence, from the experience, those two partner and I feel good about what I've done. This is why we need both experiences, inner and outer, and how we connect and create a much better feeling for ourselves. I know that you've probably relied on others to make you feel good. We've all done it, but when we do it, we allow others to dictate our worth. We don't trust our own thoughts, our feelings, our judgments. We assume others know better than we do and their opinions have more value. We become needy and ask for that validation, and then our self-esteem lacks. I need you to tell me I'm okay instead of validating myself. And guess what? That becomes a very painful experience of disapproval and criticism. It's really, as I said before, putting stock in others' opinions of you and not allowing yourself to feel good. Internal and external validation work together. But like I said before, if there's nothing on the inside, that self-validation, we end up empty no matter how much external validation we receive. So let me give you some examples of self-validation. Then I'm going to walk you through a 4-step process to begin to evaluate and really validate the self. And I'm going to talk about how the process of getting just to the facts when we have an evaluation of the self is so important. So some examples of self-validation or affirming the self would be really allowing yourself to know that the way you feel is normal and it's okay, right? Instead of judging everything you feel, really getting into a space that it's normal. It's okay. I'm fine with it. And then validating that your feelings are valid. Remember that feelings are not facts, but how you feel is your perception of an individual moment. If how I feel differs from somebody else and I'm seeking the opinion of that person, I'm going to devalue my personal feelings. I'm going to throw them off to the side and say, nope, your feelings are valid. And that's where we get into that people pleasing and not meeting the self and using the external validation when there's no self-validation. Other examples of self-validation will be simply telling the self that, hey, guess what? I'm proud of you. I'm proud of myself. I did the hard thing. And I know that I may make mistakes, but guess what? I'm okay. This is self-validation. Even asking yourself, what do I need to do better? What do I need to do to feel better? That's validating the self. It's offering what needs to happen in order to feel good. It's telling the self it's okay to cry. It's okay to make progress. It's okay to take baby steps. I gave it my best effort. I am worthy. I'm building evidence of my worthiness. It's the pat on the shoulder. Good job. I'm proud of you. It's the I'm more than my accomplishments and my failures. I'm more than my to-do list. I'm more than the little things. It's everybody makes mistakes, and that means I am everyone. It's that my feelings matter and I need to listen to what they're telling me instead of pushing them off to the side. It's trusting the instinct that you have, that gut feeling, that intuition. It's being okay with the fact that not everyone likes you. Not everyone is going to get along with you in the way that you hope them to. You're not going to have that personal connection with every person you meet. And it's okay to say, you know what, that's fine. I like myself as I am. It's also looking in the mirror and saying, hey, I like that person that's staring back at me. When we normalize this, we begin to treat ourselves like a friend. We affirm our responses and our feelings. We think about what we would say to someone if we were offering them external validation, and we become the inner piece to the Easter egg. So let's talk about 4 steps into validating the self. We'll talk about then what happens when the evidence says otherwise. So the 4-step process is actually really simple, and you've probably heard me say it before. You just didn't realize that what we were doing was validating the self. So the first part is notice how you feel and what you need, right? Do you remember those 4 questions I ask all the time? What do I want? What do I need? How do I want to feel? And how am I going to get there? This is validating the self. What do I feel? What do I need? I feel angry. I need alone time. I feel happy. I want more of this. Do you see? In every experience that we have, we're connecting to the moment through the thoughts and the emotions that we have about the experience. I feel angry. I feel happy. I feel jealous. I feel upset. I feel joyful. I feel whatever it is. I'm connecting to that moment. We think about the thought process again. Thoughts, feelings, actions. Actions, again, can be another thought. I feel pissed off. I'm angry. Emotional body rises to meet that. Maybe my fingers clench. My hands start to sweat. I start feeling that feeling within my body. I feel tense. What do I need to get out of this? I need to take a deep breath. I need to have a break from the situation. I need to not react. This is the process of validating the self. The second step to this is accepting the feelings and my needs without judgment. This is a hard thing, especially when you are in the moment. You will screw it up, and that's okay. But it looks and sounds like it's okay to be pissed off. It's okay to be angry. Everyone would feel mad in this situation. I'm going to take my time to sort out my feelings, and that feels good. In this step, in step 2, if you do something for yourself, you could actually get outer validation in that moment too. Here's where we have to talk about good, so positive, or negative or bad validation. It's really important because a lot of times when we have moments where we need to validate the self and there's an external piece to it, right? There's an experience, we can sometimes get negative validation, but we have to look at it and say, is it actually negative validation? So let's put it back into the experience where we're really mad. Let's take it to, we've asked our kids to do something. They refuse to do it. They're running their mouths because they don't really want to do it. They're tired, whatever. You have this big emotional experience of feeling disrespected and feeling upset because you really need them to help you out, whatever it is, and you react. They begin to yell back. They begin to double down and go in on you, and you are actually getting negative validation to your feelings. If you were to step back and say, everyone would be angry in this situation. I need to step away. I need to sort out my feelings. The negative validation becomes the positive experience for you. You begin to learn, I can be okay with how I feel, and I can take a moment to really validate the self and say, that person is wrong. I need to come to solutions and resolutions, but right now, I need to use their negative response as my inner calm. You can use negatives to create positives. Important. This is all a part of validating the self. The third piece is to not over-identify with your feelings. This is where everyone messes it up, okay? Every single person that experiences negative feelings, and that is everyone, tends to over-identify with those feelings. We want to accept, but we also have to remember that feelings are not facts and they do not define us forever. So if you have a negative feeling, notice it. Notice the difference between I feel angry and I am anger. Those are big differences, right? I feel angry, I am anger. Are you really anger? I feel jealous, I am jealous. I feel fear, I am fear. I feel is really understanding that I have a feeling and I can accept it. I am is the ownership of those feelings and the defining moment. How are you in this moment? What is important? Where is the difference? Our feelings are temporary. They last about 90 seconds if we don't keep them going. If we have the thought, emotional body reaches up for it, gives the feeling, and then the action takes place. If we stop it between point A and B, the thought and the feeling, we're not likely to continue it with another thought, which is the action. So 90 seconds goes from I feel to I am. I am anger, not angry. I am anger. I want you to think about that. It's this ownership. Turn it. I am anger. Are you? I am angry. That's full ownership. Or I feel angry. It's temporary. It's here that we begin to ask ourselves, what will help me move through this emotion? What will feel good? What will be needed? And what changes things for me? And then ask yourself the reason. Why do I feel this way? And if you can't get there, then that's where we go to just the facts. We've talked about this before. It's breaking down the understanding that there's another 4-step process in every experience. And if you can't validate the experience, if you can't validate your feelings, validate yourself, or we're really digging into only external validation, then we have to do this process too, which is to just break down the environment, to just break down the experience to only the facts. This happened, and this happened, and that happened. And from there, you can meet the feelings. Again, I'm going to give you an example, a pathway, but I'm telling you the experience. So just the facts of the experience, then the feelings that occurred because of the experience, and then asking yourself a question. Is this experience about me? Is this moment something that I am supposed to own? And then you give yourself a plan, a pathway of how to get out of it. This is the process of validation as well, right? This is taking the moment from the experience and giving inner and outer experience and validation to it, because you're taking the moment, you're seeing what happened on the outside, the evidence, and meeting how you feel about it on the inside. The next piece of all of this is to consider if your past circumstances are contributing to how you're feeling, to that inner and outer validation. The experiences we have tend to leave a lasting mark on our minds, right? It's the evidence. It's perfectly reasonable and acceptable to have a negative response and emotions to an experience, to a circumstance that's very similar to a past experience in which the validation was not healthy or we were hurt or whatever. In trying to validate your emotions, it's sometimes helpful to look at the past experience to better understand why you're feeling the way that you do. And if you sit in it and say, is this about this moment or is it about the past? Where is the trip line? You can begin to seek that inner and outer validation without really making someone else pay for a past experience that didn't belong to them, or even yourself. If we do this, it becomes easier to accept and understand our experiences and to validate them, inner and outer. It's also important to normalize your emotions by letting yourself feel all of them. I just gave an example of this today in session before I came to record this podcast. And it's sort of like putting all of your emotions in a brown paper grocery sack and not expecting it to become so heavy that the bottom drops out or the handles break off. If we stuff everything in hopes that the bag doesn't break, guess what? At some point, there is going to be a failure of the container that you hold the emotion in. You have to realize that you must actually process and sit. It's okay to have strong negative feelings, especially when you're dealing with something that's negative in your life. It's okay to have those experiences no matter what is happening, but you also have to be willing to process them. The important thing is not to live and dwell in the experiences that you have. And then practicing radical genuineness with the self. What does it mean to be radically genuine? It's to accept yourself for who you are, every part of you. It's the warts and the beauty. Everyone has something that they don't like about themselves that they look for the external validation for, and it's okay to have those pieces. So what if you're overreactive? So what if you've made some wrong choices in your life? So what if you've steered yourself in the wrong direction? So what if there were moments or experiences that you weren't the best person? Guess what? We've all had them. It's okay. Radical genuineness says that I know that these experiences have existed. And I dared to admit that I haven't been perfect. I dared to admit that there have been times where I have screwed up. I'm not my negative emotions. I'm not the decisions that I've made. I am who I am. And it is okay. I don't constantly need someone to tell me that I'm worthy just because of the things that have happened in the past. That leads to the question, why do we all have a hard time validating ourselves? The answer is in the evidence. We've had experiences where we've been told, where we've been shown that we shouldn't trust ourselves. And because our brain works on the evidence of our experiences, we begin to question and use our experiences against ourselves. If you lived in a culture that relies on approval of your family, then you might find it difficult to wade through your own experiences. You need to internalize that you don't necessarily need to pursue what's expected of you in order to have a life that feels the best. And vice versa. If you've learned that you only need to rely on yourself, you're going to have a hard time being okay in relationships where the external feeds the internal. You need both. Ultimately, you're walking this very fine line. We want to pick up the Easter egg. We want the Easter egg to have something inside. We want our experiences to validate what we already know about ourselves. It keeps us in a space of really building our identity, pushing down the insecurities, and giving ourselves a balance in our lives. No one is sufficient alone, right? No one feels 100% without connection. Our internal and external experiences allows us to feel our worth, to feel our self-esteem, to understand our confidence. We just don't want to let the external go too far. You can give people permission to elevate your worth and value, but we don't need to give people permission to determine our worth and our value. Remember, validation is a two-step process. If we have an experience that tells us who we are, determines our worth, it can only be felt and actually actualized, used into real behavior, if we have a standard of internal validation that's healthy. If it's all negative, if it's that empty space, that external validation means nothing. Or we're always on the lookout for everything that matches our negative feelings. We want to begin to really own what is happening within and out. I want to take a moment again to give you that list that I gave you in the very beginning about what self-validation includes or what it looks like. And it is encouraging yourself, acknowledging your strengths, successes, progress, and efforts, noticing and accepting your feelings, prioritizing your needs, treating yourself with kindness, saying nice things to the self, accepting your limitations, your flaws, and your mistakes. If you get in the habit of doing those things, any of those things, all of those things, you begin to live in the two-step process, inner and outer. The outside meets something that has substance. You are no longer the empty Easter egg. There's something that is treasured. And the outside meets that and validates the overall experience. Once you do that, you ultimately have the path to get your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life, please subscribe and turn on notifications to be alerted each week when a new episode is released. If you're looking for daily inspiration and want to continue the conversation and you're not already following me on social media, do so at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, and now Threads. You can also visit the show notes on my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. Until next time, be kind to yourself. and others.